One of the new models of the BMW for this year is the R1250R, which is a Roadster. That's what the R, letter R, is meaning. Typically it's coming out from the previous R1200 R model, which you can find a lot of reviews on the internet, and the engine is the same as we already spoke in the review of the RT version of the same model. So if you check these two things, the previous R1200R and the RT version of the new engine, then you know everything about this bike, so we can finish the review. Of course, it was only a joke, so let's check out in details what kind of motorbike is the new BMW Roadster with the ShiftCam engine. So the engine is really the same as it was in the previous GS Adventure and the RT versions. The main parameters are 1254 cubic centimeters, 136 brake horsepower and 143 Newton-meter torque, which is really huge. And as this is the lightest member of the family, not a light bike, because on its own it's also 240 kilos, but the lightest one, and together, combining with this kind of engine, it's really behaving like an animal. So drastical accelerations, straight or coming out from a curve, because of the ShiftCam version or a ShiftCam technique, which means that when you are traveling with a moderated throttle and all of a sudden you just open it because you want bigger dynamism, then the engine is changing the mechanism of the valves, and immediately it starts to work with much more power, and it's really feelable when you are riding it. When the previous big boxer engine powered Roadster came out, then a lot of BMW fans were very upset because of losing the telelever front suspension, because they said that the bike is not going to behave as it was in the case of the previous Roadster models. But luckily BMW didn't do any stupid things, because this kind of motorbike was working really very well with these telescopic forks, so they kept the whole construction for this bigger and more powerful engined version as well. So in the front we have two really thick, because they are 45 millimeter thick telescopic forks, and all of its parameters, of course you have to pay for this thing, but if you buy the dynamic asset, then all the parameters are always changed automatically by the computer of the motorbike, and the rear central suspension unit is working just on the same way. So it means that from the dashboard you can change from two possibilities: road or dynamic. Road is the more comfortable and dynamic is of course the sportier version, and then all the other dimensions of the whole suspension in the front and in the rear as well are changed automatically, and it's always perfect to the way you are riding. And it's also really important that from last year the preload is also automatically changes, so when your wife or girlfriend is sitting up behind you, then the preload in the front and in the rear too automatically are getting bigger, and then the bike is going to behave on the same way with two person as with one. Related to the brakes, there is nothing surprising and nothing really new. In the front we have two really big brake discs, 32 centimeters are the diameter of them, and 4 piston calipers, of course radial ones, and of course we have ABS, and you have to pay for it, but of course we have cornering ABS, which is never allowing that if you brake harder than the physics gives out, then you are not falling even in a curve because of it, so you can really hardly pull the front and the rear and push the rear brake as well. And all in all, the whole brake system is bringing absolutely everything. Interesting things that the ABS can be totally switched out, which is really funny thing when we are speaking about totally asphalt orientated motorbike. But anyhow, the brake system is just like in every BMW. The seat position is absolutely comfortable, and we can say all in all it's sporty. The handlebar is pretty wide and very good position, so you can sit with relaxed, absolutely relaxed arms, and always your upper body is a little bit let's say on the wind. The downer part has a little bit sportier position, but all in all it's not uncomfortable at all. But it's really important that the basic seat height, so you cannot change the seat heights on a bike which is once produced, but the basic seat height is 820 millimeters, and you can buy for it lowered seat which is very much 6 centimeters lower. That's close to cruiser categories seat height, 760 millimeters, and you can buy a little bit higher, 2 centimeter higher sport seat for the bike as well. And even this basic seat is very soft and very good and very comfortable seat. And the whole riding position when you start with the bike is totally let's say sporty, and you are really keeping your body weight well by the wind when you are riding faster, except of the accelerations, because when you start to pull the throttle, then you have to keep your whole body with your legs as well. Let's go on with the most important thing. What kind of feeling is it to ride the new Roadster? Because as I have already mentioned previously, lots of people were upset because of losing the telelever front suspension. And my opinion is that it was a very good thing that BMW forgot the telelever in the case of this motorbike, which is much more about enjoying the riding than, let's say, touring for thousands and thousands kilometers. Because when you are riding the Roadster, then you always have to work with it. It's not working as a telelever suspension motorbike that absolutely neutral. You just think that you are going to make that curve, and you don't even really feel the handlebar pushing movement what you have to do on all the motorbikes, but there it needs so few power that you are only thinking that that the bike is making the corner from itself. In the case of the Roadster and the case of this normal, let's say, telescopic suspension, it's working like a real motorbike, so you have to ride and drive the bike. You watch the corner, push the handlebar, and then the bike is leaning, and when you are riding on little bit more bumpy roads or any kind of road mistakes, then you feel so the bike transfers them to you much more than in the case of the telelever front suspension. So you really feel how the whole bike is working under you. Of course, it's keeping the line, so it's not jumping away from it even on the worst road, but the pleasure that you feel from the whole riding is much more direct than in the case of the telelever suspension versions. And if you buy the Dynamic Pro mode for the motorbike, then you get another dose of adrenaline on top of all these, because that's a special version which lets a little bit more wheel spinning on the rear and a little bit more wheelies, just a little bit, so you are not going to fall on your back, and the bike is not going sideways. But when you are accelerating out of a curve, the moving of the whole motorbike is much more funny than if it was absolutely controlled by the electronics. Although the Roadster is a rider-oriented and sporty motorbike, but it's surprisingly comfortable for the passenger as well, because the passenger seat is high enough and big enough, the place of it, and also the place for the feet are also really comfortable, so absolutely not like you are packed in a small place. And what is also very good, that the keeping possibilities are really fine, and which is even more interesting, that this whole area here behind the passenger, so this real rack is really keeping the bottom very well. So it's really if you are sitting in a nice seat, not only under you but behind you as well, and without a top case it's really keeping your whole body. Few years ago I had several times to travel on the rear seat of the previous Roadster, and very close to that on a 1200 GS model as well, and I still clearly remember that this one was much more comfortable as a passenger with this big body size than the GS. Our test bike has the connected dashboard, which is a really very informative and very well usable thing, but in the case of the Roadster version it's a little bit different, because the RPM counter is looking like power curve, and the red area is always changing. It's really interesting. In all the Boxer engines is the same, that when you start the engine absolutely cold, and the red area is starting from 5,500, and normally when you are riding then it's starting from 9,000, and it always shows you how high you can let up the rev related or as the engine temperature lets it, not to kill the Boxer engine. And of course you have a lot of different data on it. So for example you can see the vehicle data, tire pressures, trip computers, two different ones, lots of informations, and of course you can connect it to your mobile phone, navigate with it, listen to your music and everything else. We spoke about it pretty much earlier. And you can change the suspension, for example from dynamic to road, or anyhow you want to use it, and you can also switch off the traction control and the ABS as well, and you can change the riding modes. You have rain mode and road mode. These are the, let's say, serial ones, and you have to pay for the dynamic and the dynamic pro, and it's really worth to pay for the dynamic pro, because that's the funniest thing, as I have already mentioned previously. So all in all, the new BMW R 1250R, the Roadster, is a really great motorbike if those people are buying it for who this is a good motorbike, because as it proudly shows in the front that this is an R letter, which means a Roadster, so it's a naked motorbike. So it means that when you are riding with higher speeds, then you have to fight with the wind, and this whole motorbike is about this thing. So enjoying the riding, fighting with the elements. If you want big wind protection, then buy an RS version which has wind protection. If you want neutral suspension, then buy an RT version which has a telelever front suspension. If you want to feel yourself then a real man and you want to ride your motorbike and enjoy every corner and every road mistake, then this is going to be your bike. If you liked our review, please push a thumb up on it. In the description you can find the link where you can donate our work. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe for our channel and watch our previous films and reviews as well. Thanks a lot for your kind attention.